to the Crosstown Baseball Show. It is Monday, June 26th, and like always, I am here with my friend Anthony Romanelli. Anthony Romanelli doesn't roll off the tongue, apparently, but he is the other Anthony today. That's a little tease for something later on. But we are here and we're talking White Sox and Cubs baseball as we get closer to the All-Star break. Romanelli, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Happy with the Cubs as of late. Happy with the London series. I still believe that this is all the Cubs providing the illusion for me to get excited just in time for the trade deadline, and they'll buy and they'll make a tiny splash, and still nothing will happen. I completely hope I'm totally wrong, and I'm happy to eat crow as they make the playoffs and surprise the hell out of everybody, win the World Series, and whatever.
Well, that's what we're talking. That's what we're talking about today, folks. We're going to talk about the recent comments by Tom Ricketts about the Cubs being buyers. We're going to talk about the Sox treading water and just trying to survive as they get through the first half of the season. But I want to start with what you just mentioned, Romanelli. That London series, 2 games against the Cardinals. What were your impressions after seeing the Cubs and Cardinals battle it out across the pond?
I think the Cubs are absolutely in a groove right now, and I wouldn't want to play them outside of being Cincinnati or Tampa. I don't know that I'd want to play the Cubs right now. They just seem to have everything going on outside of Luis Roberts being the AL Player of the Week. With everything he's doing, I'm surprised that Happ hasn't been Player of the Week on the National League side. He is on a 2-week tear, hitting over 400, if I'm not mistaken. His OPS is through the roof. I think they're in a good place right now. Now, the Stroman blister is a minor setback. My guess is he'll miss 1 start. I don't think he'll miss more than that, especially with the All-Star break coming right around the corner. But right now, knock on wood, everything is clicking. I don't know if this is, false hope, but I'm excited right now because they're 2 games under 500, or maybe just 3. And again, I said, for the end of the year to be an absolute success, they need to be, everything's got to go well, and they'll be at 500. So outside of Cincinnati playing out of their minds, the Cubs are putting themselves in position to potentially compete for the lowly National League Central.
They certainly could, and I'll tell you what too is I'll tell you what is that must have made you felt something when Tom Ricketts, just to give everyone a kind of a preview of what we're talking about, and the reason why we're talking about the Cubs being buyers today is because in London, Tom Ricketts, as reported by Megan Montemero of the Chicago Tribune, basically came out and said, like, hey, obviously we're buyers, right? He had specifically said, and quote, things can come off the rails, but I don't think they will. I think what we have is a core that can compete for the division and compete for the playoffs. And now it's finding the missing parts to add to it. I mean, do you agree with that? I mean, it seems like you do, and it seems like it was the perfect time to hear that.
I would agree. I think he said the right thing at the right time, which is exactly what he's supposed to do. And interestingly, while they were in the background chanting "Extend Stroman," he very wisely is like, "You need to talk to Jed about that." So he's kind of talking out of both ends of himself. However, the Cubs have put themselves in a position to make themselves buyers. Are they going to make a big enough splash to get over the hump? I mean, continue to win series and make a splash, and all of a sudden and again, we talked about this forever. No one fears the Cubs, but somehow they keep winning. So let's hope they keep winning. Just keep winning. Just keep winning. Win 2 out of every 3. Win 3 out of every 4. And you'll be there at the end. Who do they go and get? They need a center fielder. I would love for them to go to get the A's center fielder. That kid can fly. He's on pace to steal over 80 bases. He's very much reminiscent right now of Ricky Henderson. I would like to see them go get him, although Talkman right now is doing more than a formidable job. He's making a name for himself, which is, I believe, one of the reasons they are where they are is because of Talkman. So the Cubs need Tyon to step it up. He's clearly not making enough of an impact since he's been here. But Hendricks is also, minus his first start, Hendricks has been fantastic. There are very few negatives right now for the Cubs, and I'm happily surprised. I'm happily surprised. I don't know what else to say.
Well, and it's right to be surprised because you look at just statistically what they're doing as a team, and they're not bad. I know their record suggests, as you said earlier, they are in fact 2 games under 500, 3 games out of first place and third in the NL Central. But when you look at just how they rank with the 15 NL teams, their ERA as a pitching staff is third in the NL. Yeah, they may be last in innings pitch and what have you, and they're not really striking out guys. They're 12th in strikeouts, but at the end of the day, I mean, they're holding their own. What I will say though is, with this team and really with any team, as you get closer to the trade deadline, it, and this is where it gets tough. Them playing in the Central, similar to the White Sox, with how just crappy both of those divisions are right now. Like, what type of splash is really required here when we talk about them buying? Like, is it a splash in the puddle? Is it a splash in the kiddie pool? Is it a splash in a 4-foot deep pool? Like, and the reason I ask is because these teams, both of them, obviously we're talking about the Cubs now, are still under 500. They're in a bad division. Is the splash to win the division, or is the splash to actually win in the playoffs? Because I tend to think while these teams are, in this case, the Cubs are playing better, one could argue, what splash is going to make sure you win when you actually get to the playoffs? Like, it's all relative here, and the relative point of view is they're they could win a bad division not because they're world beaters, because the division is bad.
Yeah,
Don't necessarily love that reality.
agreed. However, they are one of only 6 or 7. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh no, I'm wrong. Oh no, I'm right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're one of only 6 teams in the National League that have a plus run differential. It's only San Diego has less of a positive run differential, but the Cubs are a plus 32. That's
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. If the pitching keeps up and they continue to hit, I think the Cubs need to, in order to make noise, they need to get hot at the right time. They're 8-2 in their last 10. Fine. But if we go back to the beginning of the year, they say it every year. You can win. You can't win or lose a pennant in April, or you can't win in pennant in April, but you sure can lose it. And
Yeah.
they buried themselves at the beginning, and so now they've been playing catch up. Yes, they're 8-2 now. Can they ride this momentum into the, I almost said spring break, Jesus, into the All-Star break, and then can they get hot in a few different times when they need to then finish strong at the end in October? And I know October is a way away. However, it's going to come quicker than you think. I also read like little things. So they're playing Philly coming up. Philly has not won a series in 80 plus series. In 80 series, no team has been that bad since the early 1900s. So you have Philly coming up. You better win 2 out of 3. You better.
Right.
If not sweep them. You can't. I don't know. Can you say that out loud to those guys? I don't know. But because then it's a mental thing, and then they lose all 3 going into the All-Star break, and then they're not buyers anymore. So,
But even if, and now that you're talking about it, let's bring it up because I think it's worth discussion here. Is you look at the schedule rolling up into the All-Star break for the Cubs. You just mentioned the 3 against Philly at home. You have
Yep.
3 against the Guardians. Guardians are they have their days, but you can easily win 2 of 3 if you're playing good ball. And then before the All-Star break, they have 4 against the Brewers, which they proved they can hold their own against the Brewers this year. They're not the same Brewers we're familiar with. And then they end the first half with 3 at the Yankees in the
Right.
Bronx. So, I mean, the only series there that I think could present some trouble for them is the Yankees, but they could walk away from the first half being above 500 if they play their cards right.
Yeah, they really can. They're better than the Yankees in their last 10. They have a higher run differential than the Yankees. Again, they need to win the games like good teams win the games that they're supposed to. So,
Mhm.
will they win these games against Philly? They should. Will they? They're playing 4 with Milwaukee, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So at a minimum, split that. You take 3 out of 4 from Milwaukee. Okay. And then okay. Then they're making some serious noise. I know Milwaukee's not the same team, but there's something about Milwaukee always being a nemesis. I've said it from the beginning. They're always a thorn in our side. Always, 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 always. Council's a good manager. He knows how to get the best out of his guys, and they present a problem. Now, the real test, whenever they get to back to playing Cincy, that will be a test that no one expected. So we'll see what happens then. But that's a ways away.
It is. Now you mentioned talking about Cincy. Just for the folks out there, you mentioned that Luis Robert on the South Side won the American League Player of the Week. Hey,
Yep.
why didn't Hap win the American League Player of the Week for the National League? Who won the National League Player of the Week? Ellie De La Cruz of the Cincinnati Reds. So, I mean, I just want to take a tangent for a moment and talk about it,
Hitting a
the
cycle will help.
it, well, cycle will help, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, anytime you're hitting a cycle, that's kind of a shoe in for player of the week. But what I will say about the Reds is I don't know, you look at the Pirates who started off hot this season, um, and you knew that the Pirates are going to fall off the face of the earth eventually.
Yep.
I don't know about this Reds team. I think they're here to stay. I think they play really good competitive baseball, and I think they are going to be the ones that are going to be the true thorn of the sides of the Cubs for the rest of the season.
Yeah. I think the rookie and India, I had wanted the Cubs to go get India last year.
Oh,
Um, I,
sure.
I like him a lot. Um, so between those two, they're making a serious splash. Um, and I'm curious if, again, is this the Reds? How do I say this? Is this their streak, and is this all they have, or is this them starting something anew? And now all of a sudden the Reds become a serious nemesis for the Cubs.
It's a fair question. It is a fair question. I do look at this lineup, and you did mention a player, center fielder from the A's who's stealing bases like Ricky Henderson. Oddly enough, that's Esteri Ruiz. He's center fielder for the A's. Is there anyone else that comes to mind? You said a center fielder. I'm assuming I don't know if it was you were married to this specific player and his skill set or center field in general, but what do you see as if Rick gets in the Cubs and Hoyer's going to go out and start wheeling and dealing here, what is he buying? What are the necessities?
A center fielder and a first baseman. I'm sorry, a, 3 positions. Um, Interestingly, your corner infield, you have no true third baseman, you have no true first baseman. Uh, and the corner infield positions are usually cornerstones to a solid, successful hitting team, like a hitting squad. Your corner infielders are usually your go-tos, and you don't have anybody at first. Now Rizzo at the end of the year is a free agent. Just saying, what a homecoming that would be if the Cubs are doing this.
Sure.
You definitely now you don't need the veteran leadership because you have enough of that there. Would he think about coming back? And I know I'm getting ahead of myself. You could always shore up the bullpen, although you've got Alzolay who has earned the right to be their closer, even though no one still believes the dude's movement, he reminds me, he's not as strong as Stroke, but the movement on his stuff is good. Um, you can always use more help in the bullpen, always, always, always. But right now, uh, the um, the first base, without question, you need a first baseman.
Is
And yesterday, and the game the other day with the error by Madrigal was catastrophic. He took it on himself. He took the full blame for that error at first, which he shouldn't do because it's a full team effort. And I applaud him for that, for taking that error and that, or that the responsibility for that loss. But I think the Cubs felt good even coming home. I think they're still on the upswing, even though they split the series. I think the London trip was fantastic for them, for baseball. Um, but who do they need? They need a first baseman and a third baseman. Wisdom, his wrist is still hurting him, I think. And I will be the first to admit, I believe I said this. If I didn't say it on our podcast, I said it before we started our podcast. When the Cubs got rid of Bryant, I was like, sign Wisdom for 2 or 3 years. He's going to hit 25 to 30. And I really thought he would, but he's not been producing. Now his wrist is hurting. He prior to the wrist hurting, he was leading the team in strikeouts, and so he's become he's become the second biggest disappointment on the team. Do you know who my biggest disappointment is? It's Suzuki, actually.
I understand why you say that. You kind of hinted to that last week, and I think I think you say that knowing full well he's not going anywhere.
Nope, he's not going anywhere. They signed him for too much. Um, he's, I think, the highest paid player coming out of Japan in however long. He's not going anywhere. He's got to right himself, or Ross needs to give him a day off or two or something. But he's not doing well at all. They keep moving him down. He's still not hitting. He's not striking out, but he's not hitting at all. He's become like, thank God everybody else is hitting. Do you need a right fielder? No. Do you need a left fielder? No. You don't need anybody up the middle. You need corner infielders. That's what you need. You need a first baseman. I think Morel, eventually, I've said it from the beginning, he still reminds me of Aramis Ramirez, the way that dude swings.
Yeah.
Swings out of his shoes. He's super positive, super happy. I don't know. Can you move him to third base? I don't know. But you need corner. That's what the Cubs need. Who do they need to go buy? They need to go buy a first baseman and a third baseman without question. I would say that those are the two. I don't want to say they're the only holes, but again, their plus differential is they're doing well. Like right now, again, it's this. Everybody knows it's a roller coaster, but right now they're doing okay. They're doing better than okay, and it's fun to watch. I fear like if Hap goes on a downtrend, what's going to happen to the team. Right now, though, everybody's doing pretty well. I think there's a good vibe. What do they need? A first baseman and a third baseman without question.
So, all right. I want to go to your first base thing for a moment here, because this is a prime example of this new baseball world that we live in, where there's the people that are competing and there's the people that are not. And because that 14 teams now make the playoffs, you have teams like the Cubs and the Sox that are at or below 500 in that middle category where we could compete if we want to, or maybe not. I don't know. Like, these teams are the teams that, like, it used to be at the trade deadline. You know this just as well as I do, that those are teams at the deadline that if you were competing, you wanted to push all of your chips in, make a big trade, make the splash, multiple player, 3-team deals, whatever the hell it is. Now, I do think you're going to see teams not necessarily make those big splashes, but make kind of MLB ready for MLB ready trades, things that don't necessarily tip the scales, but put them in a better position, both short term and long term. I'll give you an example. Okay. You talk about first base. For some reason, you didn't mention Cody Bellinger at all. Okay. I'm kind of curious as to why you didn't. And I'll let you answer that and talk about that in a moment. But are the Cubs going to be a team where they're in a position where they go, hey, we are going to try to win. We're also going to think about the long term here. Why don't we take Cody Bellinger, trade him, and get a couple pieces now in an MLB and MLB for MLB ready trade.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think, and I said this before, I believe that Bellinger is a great first baseman. Not great, that's the wrong word. He's a solid first baseman, but his bat is fantastic. You move him to center. I'm sorry, you move him to first base forever. There's your legit solve because he's got the size of a first baseman. He's got the glove. He's a solid first baseman. And you go get that. You go get a center fielder, somebody who's got bat speed, and somebody who can fly. Again, that kid from Oakland. He's the only kid I can think of. He's the only one I can think of. But realistically, um, that's what I do. Bellinger, I believe wholeheartedly, Bellinger should stay at first. You're not trading Cody Bellinger, I don't think, because he's doing. I don't think. I think he's doing.
I don't think so either.
I think he's doing too well. I do.
So let's talk scenarios for a second here because
Sure.
I think it is very interesting to consider. It is and I'm not kind of I don't want to go without giving the White Sox credit. I will talk about the White Sox and what they're going to do, buyers or sellers. But right now we are talking about the Cubs, and they have explicitly came out and said we are buyers, which means we can start talking about what exactly does that mean. Now, if I were to paint a picture for you of going to a team that has a crap ton of outfielders, okay, that can fix your center fielder problem, I'm calling the St. Louis Cardinals, okay, who have not Tyler O'Neill because he's on the 60-day DL, but
No,
they have Brendan Donovan, who's one of the younger guys, probably not him, but they have an Oscar
no,
Mercado, a Dylan Carlson, a Lars Nootbaar, those type of guys. Is that piquing your interest?
no. Just no.
Very matter of fact.
Uh, and it has nothing to do with them being a division rival, honestly. But none of them have done anything to put themselves on my radar, and they're in the division. So that's how I look at it. If you're in my division and I don't know that you exist, um, even by face, then no, you've done nothing for me. Again, if I can recognize the kid from Oakland and watch him play it just enough, that I like what he's doing, I like what I see. And again, Oakland is the major league's quadruple A team, realistically, because all they do is them and Tampa used to be that way,
Yeah.
but Tampa's finally figured it out, and now everybody wants to be like Tampa. Um, so, no, it doesn't do much for me from the kids from St. Louis.
Well,
And,
it is.
go ahead.
I find it interesting because I mean, this is where it gets tough, right, for people at the trade deadline because I don't know. It gets tough for buyers because you have less teams that are selling
Right.
theoretically, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's what kind of reinforces my thought earlier of you have teams that are more likely to make kind of straight MLB ready for MLB ready trades. It isn't necessarily going to be one star going to one side and then a package of 4 or 3 prospects going the other way, as it always has been. Will that happen? Sure, but instead of that happening with 14 potential suitors, now it's happening with 5 or 6 potential suitors at the most. I think. I think for as much as we get excited about the trade deadline, I'm hampering my expectations because I don't think it's going to be as glitzy and glamorous as it used to be in years past.
I would agree. I also, um, and I think there's an underlying factor here for the Cubs, and it's their current record. This
Hmm.
is why this Philly series is more important than people think. They're 2 games under. Okay, if you lose 2 or 3, you're 4 games under. Are you still a buyer at 4 games under? And that's only 2 days away
How can you make the argument you're not?
because you're 4 games under.
4 games under with 81 games to go. See,
But
this is
you've
where it
only had
gets
one.
tough.
But you've only had one winning streak all year.
True, true.
So,
That's true.
so and
That's
again,
true.
you've had one winning streak out of it. Okay, so by the time we get there, it'll be 81 games. Okay, you've had one winning streak in 81 potential games. Am I really a buyer if they don't win 2 or 3.
See, this is where it gets dicey because if I'm sitting in Jed Hoyer's seat, or Rick Hahn's seat for that matter, and I'm sure as hell know the White Sox are thinking about this, not even to talk about them
No,
yet. You know they're thinking about it because what what is worse? What is worse? Is it
false
worse?
hope.
Is it worse being the GM of a team and trying to go all in when you know maybe it's a little difficult to do so, maybe you're 4 or 5 games out, whatever, or is it better to not go all in and just resign to the fact that, we're 4.5, 5 games out, but of a bad division. You're not 5 games back from the Rangers or 5 games back from the
No,
Rays. You're 5 games back from the Brewers and the Reds. You've 3, 4, 5 games back from them. So this I do not envy Jed Hoyer and Rick Hahn because they're literally both in the same position. They're back
yeah,
in bad divisions. And in a normal year, if they were 5 games, 6 games back of a normal division, yeah, probably. But what happens when they don't go all in? How do fans respond?
well, um, are the Cubs at only 2 games under and potentially even at the trade deadline or damn near close or All-Star break? Sorry. Where was I going with this shit? I just lost my train of thought. Are they buyer? No, that's not where I was going. Damn it! I
That
completely had a
this
brain
is
fart.
this is
Um,
literally the first time you've ever had a brain fart in all of
ever.
our episodes of doing this.
I think it is. um, I don't know. I'm so curious what happens with this Philly series. I think there's more pressure on the Cubs than they realize. Um, because then it puts, like you said, it puts the pressure on Jed if they don't win. Now, if they take 2 or 3, then they're going to only be 1 game under 500, and then yeah, they're in the thick of things. Um, Again, in a week. Oh, I know. There we go. Are the Cubs like the 2015 Cubs in that they're a year ahead of schedule? If
Yeah,
they're just at 500, okay, are they a year ahead of schedule to where next year they make whatever big splash that they're thinking? And is that, and dare I say, is that splash Otani? Who the hell? I mean, the dude's going to ask and probably get what, anywhere from $500 to $600 million,
it-
and he's making 5 million this year, and he's going to be worth every penny no matter where he goes.
yeah, yeah.
And so that's like, are you looking the next year? Who is legitimately thinking about Otani? It can be 10 teams or less, and I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but are you a year? But in looking in October, at the end of October, are the Cubs a year ahead of schedule, or are they right on where they're supposed to be? Because again, if we look, they're still above average scoring runs. They're, what'd you say in pitching?
They're
Three,
third in ERA.
third in ERA. They're above in scoring runs. So I mean, those two pieces are huge. They're no longer, if you remember at the beginning of the year, they were leading the MLB. They were leading MLB and leaving men on base. They're nowhere near that anymore. Now I think it might be the Angels now. Most men left on base at the moment. Um, so they've turned it around. They've turned a lot of things around. It's just taken a little bit longer than anyone has hoped, and hopefully they didn't bury themselves by, if they lose out in the playoffs by, let's say, 3 games or 5 games or less, they're going to kick themselves in the ass. They're going to
Absolutely.
they're going to kick
That
themselves in the
if
ass.
if they didn't do anything to reinforce that.
Yep,
Absolutely.
yep. They need to. So they need to make moves? Yeah, and I think everybody knows first base as a whole. I think everybody knows that third base is a problem, at least offensive production wise. And well, and the error yesterday, again, everybody's allowed errors, so that's not that big of a deal to me. And the Cubs still scored 5 runs yesterday, so they're still scoring runs.
Right.
So that again, that's huge. They are definitely on an upward trend. So should they
They're
be buyers? Yeah, because they're on an upward trend. Is this false hope? Because it's the only, right now, it's the only run they've had.
I mean, anything can happen with 81 more games, and I
Right.
think Jed Hoyer is sitting there thinking the same thing, and there is no universe that you don't sit there with that team and add some pieces, or at least attempt to.
I
So
would agree.
so it's gonna be very interesting, folks. With the Cubs, like you're saying, Romanelli, they're playing better ball. I like to see. Tend to view the All Star break as being the ultimate reset.
Me
I
too.
say all the time. Like they
Me too.
always say, like momentum is only as good as your next day starting pitcher. Well, that all goes out the window during the All Star break. It's basically pressing the reset button. So I'll be very interested to see how they come out.
One last, yeah, and then one last side note that I found out just today, and I was like, "This is really cool." And we could talk White Sox the rest of the day. Ian Happ's batting gloves are going to Cooperstown.
Ones from London,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. The two home runs in the series he had has now made that uh, allowed those gloves to go to Cooperstown. To me, that's just a quick, cool little side note. That's all.
I mean, I mean, imagine, and you hear these stories all the time about
I had
players
goosebumps.
sending their stuff to Cooperstown, and I can't imagine how that feels to be the player.
Oh my
You
god,
know
I
what I
have
mean?
goosebumps right now. It's just the coolest thing ever.
Man,
From winning a Gold Glove to going to play in London to all of a sudden having your gloves go sit in Cooperstown along, with the absolute greatest to ever do it. It's just the greatest. It's just so cool.
ugh, good
All
shit.
right, on to the White Sox.
So with the White Sox, here's the thing: is we talk about the Cubs playing better lately, and it's not even that the White Sox have been playing better lately. One could argue they have been, but we kind of talked about this last week that the Sox have these 2 games where they're playing really well and everything's clicking, and then they'll play another 2 games and things are really falling off the table. And we saw the same thing last year where there was just the same thing all season, essentially 500 ball and not clicking at the same time. Um, right now they're in a, I would say, a pretty precarious position where they are fourth in the division. They're not 3 games back like the Cubs. They are in just as bad of a division, but they're 6 games back. They're 4-6 in their last 10. They haven't been able to put runs up where it matters because the run differential is still -60. Um, this is a situation where I kind of feared a couple months ago is proving itself to be true is after April, obviously they had a very poor showing in April. They came back and were able to get closer to 500. Um, but folks, they're still 11 games under 500.
11 games under
11.
500.
Eleven.
They need to burn it to the ground.
They
Burn it
I
to the ground.
I
And
hate
I
to
hate to
say
say
that,
that.
but I hate to say that too, and that's kind of my point here is it's almost kind of like a shit or get off the pot thing here. Like I need them to either go on a streak and put it all together, and this is coming as someone who ultimately wants to see them succeed, is I kind of want them to crash and burn so I know what direction we're going in here,
Yeah.
right? Like don't tread water the whole time, because Rick Hahn's having the same thought process that Hoyer's having right now. Is he's looking at this and going, okay, 6 games, crappy division, our hitting has its moments, Luis Robert, blah blah blah. If I
Only
reinforce this team, maybe I can get there.
except, yes, they're only 6 games out, but they're 11 games under. In no world is that a recipe for success. Not even remotely. And even if they win 11 or 12 in a row the way the Reds did, they're still not going to be close to competing
No,
in the shittiest division.
no.
They're about as bad as they can get in the worst division possible. Um, I mean, there's light years between them and Kansas City for being bad, but they're pretty damn bad. And again, to be 11 games under, there's again, as far as I'm concerned, burn it, just burn
I
it all.
I'm with you. My inner emotional being is like burn it to the ground, all to hell,
To
basically
me,
old man yelling at a cloud. That's
it,
me. But what I will say here is I there's that side of me, but there's also the realistic side of me that's going in the world of baseball that we now know it. Going back to my point with the Cubs is this is how can you go to your fans and go to anybody that's associated with this team and go, let's tear the whole thing down? I don't think that's as likely as much as it's likely to do kind of like a retool, which the Yankees are famous for doing. The Yankees never really tear it down. Now, before anyone says like, "Oh, Anthony, it's the Yankees," I'm aware, I know, okay, but the Yankees never really tear it down. They always retool. And if you look at the kind of the what the Sox have put together as a solid foundation, you're looking at guys like Dylan Cease, Michael Kopech in a rotation. You're looking at guys like Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez, if he ever decides to actually stay healthy and eat his vitamins. Um, Andrew Benintendi's with this team for another 4 years, 4.5 years. Um, there are some foundational pieces here where if you were to do something like trade a Tim Anderson or trade a Lucas Giolito and get some pieces, you're looking at a retool that takes maybe an off season and a trade deadline, maybe where again you're competing for one of now 14 spots. Like it's just not what it used to be. I don't know that you can just tear it to the ground and wait another 5 or 6 years. Fans are going to put up with that shit. I don't know if you can wait 5 to 6 years. Why not take a year and a half to just, you know,
Here's my only comment to that is this, and I know this may sound strange. If the White Sox are in single digit numbers under 500, if you're 8 under versus 11, okay? If you win 4 in a row, you're still 7 games under.
yeah,
You win 4 in a row at 8, you're only 4 under. So that's winning 4 in a row. As far as I'm concerned, burn it to the ground
they
because
can't do that.
I know the only one they keep in my mind, the only untouchable is Dylan Cease. That's it. Everybody else.
That's fair. That's fair. And you're right. I think I would go as far as saying if purely because of how he's playing this season and the cost control of his contract and what he's under contract for, I would add Luis Robert to that list on the position player side.
Yeah,
And
from the
and
position player.
and
Yeah,
even then, I think you could be talked into that one if it's a really good deal, potentially. Um,
you would have.
but but
There's your 4 and 5 players for
g-
Robbins.
there you go. There you go.
Maybe 3 and 4, but yeah.
But what I will say is like because they're down 11 games that are 500, because they're out 6 games, if the fan am kind of hoping that they don't kind of blind leading the blind be buyers like the Cubs are doing and try to
No,
make this work, because you know
no
what that
way.
is to me? That's like saying when we get home you'll get candy and that candy is the hard mints you find at the bottom of your grandma's purse. That's the candy. Like I don't
Yeah,
want that. I
no.
I want to know that you're going to actually be competitive and go to the playoffs and win playoff baseball.
I want
And
to
this
reach.
team this team is far farther than the Cubs, I would argue right now,
Oh,
from
without
playing playoff baseball.
agree. Excuse me.
You're good.
Thank you. Yeah, I again, Luis Roberts and Cease are the only names that stay. Everybody else goes. Um, Tim Anderson, I have nothing for. Eloy Jimenez, I have nothing for.
I'm
They're
ready to pull the plug on Eloy. I have no patience for it anymore. I don't care if he
same
goes
with,
to the I don't care if he goes to whatever team and hits 40 home runs next year. I just don't even care.
and the idea of putting uh, when he put Jesus Anderson at second base just to get him back in the flow to
Yeah.
then move him over to short. What are you doing? Like either send him down to rehab to or AAA. Like you're just moving him over a base. Why? Why? What? That does no good because you're looking at everything from the complete opposite side for one game. What?
Well,
Why?
let me remind folks. Let me remind folks that he did play second base basically all of the World Baseball Classic and hit very well and had a strong showing. But I think there is some I don't want to guess and I don't want to, assume, but there is some advantage there to seeing and displaying Tim Anderson's versatility as we
However,
get closer to the trade deadline.
however, if you're going to do that, you don't showboat him for one game, or not. That's not even the right word. You don't put him there for one game. You're like, you know what? We want to look at this and let him play there for 3 or 4 games to get used to it. Any guy, any one of those guys are can play any position because ultimately they're athletes. Any
Sure.
shortstop can play second base and vice versa. Any shortstop can play third. Any third baseman can play short. You may not be able to put a right fielder at third, but
Right.
any infielder, any second, short, or third baseman, realistically, those positions are interchangeable. And what I didn't like about it was one game. You're putting him there for one game. Why? That does nothing for me, and it doesn't prove to me like shit. Rest him.
Well, and so you're bringing up a broader point, and this is a organizational potentially an organizational issue. Is there is no secret that guys around all of Major League Baseball, they're never all 100%, right? I mean, this is a
No, you can't be. It's
162 game
150. Yeah, no
season.
way.
I mean, you imagine their
No,
health being a green bar. It's not always a full green bar all the time.
no,
There's sometimes they're in
no
the
way.
orange and the yellow. But
Right,
the case for Tim Anderson was playing at second as from Pedro Grafal was he's got some shoulder issues. He's not going to be able to make the throw deep in the hole as shortstop to first base, but he's well enough to play second and make the throw from second. So I understand that, but the broader problem for me is just do what you need to do to get the guy right.
right.
Like like
Exactly.
we're not
Put him on
playing
the
for a first place right now.
no. Put him on the 15-day deal. Get him healthy,
Right.
healthy. And again, that's the issue I've had with Anderson forever. He's not healthy to begin with. He
No,
never.
not
He
at all.
doesn't stay healthy long enough. And so I'm gonna let him play, but I'm gonna allow him to make a shorter throw. But then he still has to swing out of his shoes at to try and hit a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. Like, come on, who the hell are you fooling?
I don't I
That's dumb. That's just dumb.
No, I'm with you. I do think, when we look at it in the context of the trade deadline as we get closer to the All-Star break here, we'll go over the remaining schedule of the first half here in a second, but um two things I think are true. Number 1, I am becoming more certain that Tim Anderson is not on this team after the trade deadline. I don't think he can be. And additionally, I think I think while the Sox do not want to get rid of Lucas Giolito, I think we know two things are true. Lucas Giolito will test the free agent market, and I don't know that the Sox are going to be willing to pay him. So I think they're going to lose him regardless. And two, the available pitchers this trade deadline are going to be slim pickings, folks.
Yeah,
So I think they're going to have a really good market to get a kind of an overvalue return for Giolito in this pitching market, and I think they should take advantage of that.
I think they should too. I don't know that Giolito's pitched well enough realistically to get the money he wants, but I think because the market is going to be, in his favor, like they'll pay what the market will bear. I don't know the exact expression. Um,
Sure.
it evades me at the moment, uh, but he'll make his money. But is he
Yeah.
going to be worth it? No, I don't think so.
And that's the problem. And that's the problem with free agency as we know it is especially in the economics of the game now. This is why these teams like the Braves go to such epic lengths to sign their younger guys long term now more than ever and take the gamble now because you're taking a 7, 8, 9, $10 million a year gamble. Giolito can easily get 22, 24 million a year. And that sounds ridiculous, but the market will bear it and people will overpay because that's what you do in free agency. And there's really no escaping that.
Nope. And it's paying off. It's paying dividends for Atlanta for sure.
Hmm.
Right now, I think they're what 48 or 49. They might even have as many as 50 wins, if I'm not mistaken. They're doing quite well.
They are.
And so it's paying dividends for them to pay a lot of money to young kids to do really well. The Cubs kind of did the same thing a few years back with Contreras and Rizzo and Bryant, and it paid dividends for them as well. So maybe the Braves are onto something.
Sure seems like it. The Sox did that too with Eloy and Luis
Yeah.
Robert, and can't say it had the same dividends. So,
No.
well, what I'll say is this: is let's take a look at the remaining schedule for the first half here for the Sox. They're actually, as we speak, we'll be starting a game in about 30 minutes. They are in LA playing the Angels. Shohei Ohtani in attendance. Shohei Ohtani will be pitching against the Sox tomorrow night, so they will get creamed tomorrow. Um, will be 4 games this week in LA against the Angels. Then they will have a 3-game pit stop in Oakland to play the A's, which I know they're the A's, but also this is the White Sox, so let's be
Right.
real. So 3 against the A's, that wraps up a West Coast trip. Then right before the All-Star break, they come home for 3 against the it's an all birds homestand, folks. 3 against the Blue Jays, 3 against the Cardinals at home before the All-Star break. So either they're gonna flip the bird or the bird's gonna be flipped at us. We'll find out later. But to me, not feeling good about that, if I'm being honest, because the way that
No,
I see that unfolding is you lose 3 of 4 against the A's. Maybe you squeak 2 of 3 against the I'm sorry, you lose 3 of 4 against the Angels. I said that wrong. Maybe you get 3 of 2 or 2 of 3 from the A's. Maybe. The A's, they surprise you, believe it or not. I know their record sucks, but let's be honest. Blue Jays,
not a chance.
not a chance. 2 or 3, maybe a sweep right there. Cardinals, I know they're not playing well. I know, but it's the Cardinals. They could still hit the ball and they will out hit the Sox, I do think.
Right.
So I'm not feeling really good about that. They could be in a position that they come to the All-Star break and it could very well be that they're 8 games back. I mean, they're only 6 games back now, folks. We're talking another 2 games. If they're 8 games back by this All-Star break, just
Blow it up.
yeah,
I, you know,
just it's a
blow,
shoe-in, folks. I don't want to hear anything about it. It's not a debate at that point anymore.
and I hate the fact that we were like, yeah, the White Sox are going to win the division, and the Cubs will be lucky to be 500.
Wow,
And now you've got the Cubs right where I thought they would be, and the White Sox aren't even on the map.
absolutely
They're just missing completely.
pisses me off.
And it's hard to. Interestingly, it's hard to watch. It's like the Cubs were. Again, they switched places, and I don't want the Cubs to go back. And I'm not wishing the White Sox, doom. But like either win 3 or 4 from the Angels or sell or blow it up. 3 or 4 from the Angels or blow it up because it's over. Because the Angels, you've got the best pitcher, the best player in all of baseball. If you can take 3 or 4 from the Angels, like okay, but again, you're still then you take 3 or 4 from the Angels, and let's say you take 1 of 3. There's the kick in the teeth. You take 3 or 4 from the Angels, and then you only win 1 of 3 from the A's because you got yourself so jacked up to play the Angels.
That
And
seems
then,
like exactly the White Sox thing to do.
exactly. So blow them up, start over. I'm not. I know you want to piecemeal it, but I don't think they know how. I don't think management knows how, and it's evident as hell that they, sell the team. Han and Kenny, they just don't have the baseball acumen anymore.
What
It's no, I'm stating a fact. It's nothing
yes.
personal against them. They don't have it anymore. They don't have that edge. They don't have it.
You're bringing up something that is key to all of this, and that is we could talk about the Sox buying and selling all we want during this trade deadline and making moves this offseason to retool, tear it down, whatever. The fact of the matter is, no matter what they do, I don't want those guys to be the one to do it. And that's this all starts there.
Yeah, and it's sad to say, but the reality is, and again, I mentioned this or I use this phrase, like no one, well maybe Roberts, no one scares me on the White Sox. No one. Like when I'm pitching, no one's going to scare me. Maybe Roberts, so you pitch around him, big deal.
Yeah.
No one scares me. Cease is the only pitcher that we know that the 200 strikeouts, he's still capable of that. Again, I'm disappointed in Clevenger. I really liked him. He hasn't lived up to it. I don't know, man. It's like they blew a tire and they keep trying to get home.
Yeah.
It's not change the tire. I don't know what else to say.
Just get a whole new car.
Yeah, get a whole new car.
Well, if
dump your car at Victory Auto Wreckers.
Well, well, I'll tell you this: they'll get through these games. They'll have their West Coast series, their 2 bird series. They'll get through the All-Star break, and then they'll be able to press the reset button to start afresh after the All-Star break, and they'll play 3 games against the Braves in Atlanta. So this is going to go swimmingly.
Now all of a sudden my mind just I completely diverted, and I was like, how awesome would it be if you did an all bird series where you do the Orioles, the Jays, and the Cardinals all like just an all bird series?
There you go.
You do the Sox versus the Birds, the White Sox, Red Sox, all birds. Like, just be stupid about the whole thing.
I mean, might as well. I mean, hell, we're going to London. I mean, we have games in fields of corn. I mean, we're really just a step away from doing that.
Pick names out of a hat just to see who you play.
Right. Well, Romanelli, any last words for tonight?
No, man. This was fun. I'll say an extra prayer or two for the White Sox if they go on a winning streak. I'll say that same prayer that the Cubs keep it up. I'm surprisingly happy right now that they're only a couple games out, but they again to use a somewhat how do I say this? Somewhat. I'll forget it. They need to keep just doing what they're doing. The Cubs just need to keep on doing what they're doing. Just stay under the radar, keep winning, don't make any noise, and just come in strong at the end and see what happens.
Well,
but let everybody else look at Atlanta and the Dodgers. Fine, I don't give a shit. Just keep winning.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're having fun. It's like reliving my worst nightmare every day. So that'll do it all tonight for that'll do it for tonight's episode of the Crosstown Baseball Show. Folks, if you're not following us on YouTube, please go to YouTube, search Crosstown Baseball Show. Go ahead and click that like button. Go ahead and follow us so you can get notifications.
For the love of God, follow us.
Please. You heard the other Anthony. Follow directions. Follow us. So go ahead and do that. Go ahead and follow us also wherever you get your audio podcasts, whether that's Google, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get them. We're there. And please leave a review and comment where you can, because that really helps us. But until next time, folks, go White Sox.
Go Cubs.
Take care, everybody.